Matthew Tave, and this is my video presentation for my open source project. The open source project I decided to work on is Godot, which is a 2D and 3D cross platform game engine that is completely open source and allows developers to develop their games for any platform with no strings attached. The issue that I decided to work on was adding more unit tests because, as the managers of the project say, their unit test coverage is currently very low. I decided to work on adding tests to the Path2D class. Now I'm going to go over my contribution. So my contribution was adding this entire test Path2D header file, which is a test suite for the Path2D class. I was provided a template by Godot for this file, which includes all of this stuff in the header and some includes in general structure, but I did write all the test cases. Some test cases are extremely similar to test cases that were already implemented in Path 3D or Test Path 3D. Those test cases were the initialization test case, assigning a curve to a Path 2D multiple times, and changing the assigned curve. But I wrote the assigning the same curve to multiple Path 2D objects and switching curves between two Path 2D objects, and those were original and written by me. In terms of security vulnerabilities, I don't believe that these tests should introduce any more vulnerabilities into this because they're only run when you specifically ask to run tests when you're compiling Godot yourself, and someone who is just using Godot wouldn't ever actually run this code. I could see it being possible if that malware could be introduced into the classes that are being tested. If the Path2D class was somehow modified to add malware that could make it into I could see that making it into the tests, but I think that's highly unlikely because I think it would have to be approved and those changes have to be approved and added to the main repository. I did run into a major roadblock when I was creating these tests, and that is that the Path2D object cannot actually be initialized because it requires some dependencies that the testing software does not support. So right now, if you try to run these tests, you'll actually run into a segmentation fault. Right now, that's an issue that doesn't have anything to do with how these test cases are written, and some similar test cases, for example, the test cases for PathFollow 2D that also initialize Path 2D run into these same issues, and these tests were already created and merged into the main repository. I talked with some other contributors on a contributor chat, and they helped me confirm that this isn't an issue with the way that I actually wrote these tests, but it's an issue with the way these tests are run in the test software that will hopefully be fixed in the future. So for now, I went ahead and submitted a pull request for these tests, and hopefully, once the issue is fixed in the test software, these tests will be able to run. This is the pull request that I submitted, and I do note the current issues with it, and that I talked with other contributors about the causes of these, and I asked for feedback and if there actually is anything wrong with the test for them to let me know, and I would modify my tests accordingly. In hindsight, I wish that I had dived a bit deeper into the code and understood the code base a bit more before I started making changes and actually writing the tests, because then I could have understood that initializing a Path2D object would be more of an issue before actually writing the tests. I think that would have helped me a lot. And in the future, I think that I'm going to try to understand the code base more before making any changes. Overall, though, I think this was a great experience and a great first contribution to open source software for me.